You ever get hit with a 47-page violation notice just for having friends over and cooking dinner? Yeah. That happened. 4 cars in my driveway, a campfire, and some grilled vegetables. Apparently that's enough to trigger a full-blown HOA investigation when you're living in Larkspur Ridge. I'm Mason Ford, 35, software engineer, quiet guy, keeps to himself. 6 months ago, I inherited my grandfather's old cabin in the mountains. Figured I'd hang onto it, clean it up on weekends, maybe use it as an Airbnb if the mood struck. Nothing big. Just a patch of peace. So I invited 3 old college friends for a weekend. Phoenix, a film editor with a sharp eye and sharper opinions, Sage, a public interest lawyer who could debate a pinecone into submission, and River, our resident campfire chef. We hadn't all been together in 10 years. It felt like we were finally exhaling after a decade of adulting. And then she showed up. Cordelia Bramble, HOA president. If the devil wore a power blazer and drove a Prius, that'd be her. She walked up our driveway like she was inspecting a crime scene, eyes scanning every inch, nostrils flared like she could smell rule violations. She didn't say hi. Just handed me a thick packet, smiled like a villain in a courtroom drama, and said, "You've been served." The charges: too many vehicles, non-permitted gathering, suspected commercial cooking, unauthorized vegetation. Yeah, apparently the blue spruces in my yard were planted without formal approval. Now here's the thing. Those trees. My grandfather planted them. They'd been there for years. But Cordelia didn't care. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was hunting for something. Later that night, I found 3 hidden cameras tucked into the trees and under the eaves. High-grade, motion-sensitive, corporate-level surveillance. Not the kind you get from Home Depot. And taped to the last page of the violation packet. A blueprint. Labeled 1985. Detailed structural diagrams of my cabin, including a basement. One I'd never seen. No door. No stairs. No mention in the property records. Let me back up a sec. My grandfather, Ezra Ford, was a stubborn man. Private. Kept to himself after he retired, barely left the mountains. But he never struck me as the paranoid type. Now I'm starting to wonder if maybe he was the only sane one left. The next morning, Cordelia came back. This time with chainsaws. And a crew in uniforms I didn't recognize, not HOA security, not police. These guys were quiet, clean-cut, moving with military precision. One of them introduced himself as Hendrik, said he was contracted enforcement. His badge looked laminated. They started cutting down the trees. Not all of them, just the 3 closest to the house. Measured the distance between each trunk like they were triangulating something. And when the chainsaw hit metal, they stopped. What they pulled out looked like something out of a spy movie, a sealed titanium capsule, embedded inside the tree. Cordelia took it like it was sacred. Locked it in a containment case lined with foam and silver mesh. Not your average HOA procedure. I waited until they left. Then I followed the blueprint. There was a false panel behind the water heater. When I pried it open, a metal staircase led down into pitch black. I used my phone's flashlight, descended slowly until I reached a basement that didn't exist. The air was cold. Machines were still running, old-school computers, blinking lights, humming quietly. On one table, there was a thick folder. Labeled, Project Alpha Genesis Subject 700079999. I opened it. And there I was. Subject Delta 7739. According to the file, I was part of an experimental program as a kid. Something called neural optimization. They tested memory acceleration on me when I was 9. Said I'd been pulled from the study early due to a guardian override. That guardian was Ezra. My grandfather had saved me. But he hadn't just walked away. He'd stolen something. The rest of the basement was a time capsule, cryo chambers, blood samples, encrypted data cards. This wasn't just a lab. It was a vault. And that capsule they pulled from the tree. One of several backup storage units. I found more files. Phoenix. Sage. River. All of us had been part of it. Different enhancements, visual processing, logic mapping, sensory amplification. And we'd all ended up in the same dorm at college. Coincidence? Not likely. Then I saw her name. Cordelia Bramble. Subject Alpha 01. The first successful prototype. Raised inside the program since she was 5. Recruited into internal security. Turned into a tool for the company that built this whole nightmare. The company. PharmGenesis Biotech. They owned shell corporations, bought up land in quiet places, buried research beneath summer camps and retirement homes. The HOA. Just a front. A control system. And the worst part. Cordelia wasn't the top of the chain. That night, I met Iris. She found me in the tunnel behind the lab, late 20s, quiet, calculated, and flashed a badge. FBI. Undercover. She'd spent the last 8 years posing as a junior agent inside PharmGenesis. And now that I'd unlocked the lab, that was the signal. We didn't have much time. The company had deployed a cleanup crew, hazmat suits, fake CDC tags, black vans with no plates. They were gonna wipe it all. Burn the lab. Erase the files. Silence everyone. But they hadn't counted on Ezra's contingency plans. I used the capsule's data card to trigger a mass upload. Encrypted backups were sent to whistleblower servers, journalists, watchdog groups. Everything, medical records, subject lists, research trials, hit the internet at once. Cordelia showed up just as the first file went live. Her team froze. Iris stepped forward and said, "You're done." Cordelia didn't fight. She looked tired. Like something in her heart finally snapped. Then she said, "Tell them I cooperated," and handed over her ID. That was the last time I saw her. A month later, PharmGenesis collapsed. Federal indictments. Congressional hearings. Hidden labs discovered in 6 other states. And Ezra Ford, the man I thought just wanted to be left alone, became a national hero. We turned the cabin into a sanctuary. Phoenix runs a photo archive. Sage is pushing for reparations legislation. River teaches cooking classes for survivors. Me. I stayed. Planted new trees. Built a bench where the lab entrance used to be. Sometimes I just sit there, watching the wind in the branches, thinking about how close we came to losing it all. But every now and then, I wonder. How many more Cordelias are out there? How many more basements are still locked, waiting for the right set of eyes to open them? And if someone handed you the key, would you dare turn it? Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. What would you do if you found out your quiet little life was built on someone else's experiment? Where do we draw the line between protection and control? Between security and silence? Let's talk. Because this story isn't just mine. It might be yours too.